So recently I've seen a lot of people online talking about nuclear war and a lot of misconceptions and bad information flowing around, so I kind of wanted to correct this. And to start with, it's not that big a deal. Take off the silly helmet. Okay, so there's this misconception that in the event of a nuclear war, everyone's going to die. That's kind of BS. Now, at the height of the Cold War, Russia had a nuclear arsenal of about 45,000 nuclear warheads. The biggest thing they detonated, I believe, was around 50 megatons, maybe 60, somewhere around there. Right now, Russia has just under 6,000 nuclear warheads. The US has about 5,500, somewhere around there. Specifics are like classified government secrets, but they're around this. China has about 400. That's up from about 200 a couple years ago, so they're increasing their stockpile. But the key thing is, like, if you want to look at adversaries in the U.S., Russia and China combined have like 6,200, somewhere around there, nuclear warheads. And the biggest nuclear warhead in most of these arsenals, if you want to look US, Russia, China, is 5 megatons. Now, the specific breakdown of how many of each type of nuclear warhead, I haven't been able to find details on. The biggest thing they've got is 5 megatons. I've seen some rumors that Pakistan and India both might have some bigger stuff up into the 20 megaton range. But generally, since the end of the Cold War, as targeting systems have become more accurate, the need for large bombs kind of went away and people are using small bombs. So, for example, like I said, I can't find out the details on how much of this is the 5 megaton bombs, how much is a 1 megaton bombs, and how much is a lot smaller. If you want just an example, though, the Kinzhal missile, which is kind of a famous, or at least talked about, Russian hypersonic missile, yes, that can carry a nuclear warhead. There are nuclear warheads Russia has that can mount on that. That will only hold a 50 kiloton nuclear warhead. Not 5 megatons, not 50 megatons like during the Cold War, some of the stuff. 50 kilotons. So relatively small. Now, in addition to that, out of those roughly 6,000 nuclear warheads Russia's got, only about 1,600 of them are actually deployed and ready to launch. The rest are in storage facilities, warehouses, and undergoing maintenance. So I don't know numbers for China on how much they've got deployed versus not deployed. If you assume all of China's stuff's currently deployed, that brings us to a total nuclear arsenal and first strike capability between Russia plus China, if they coordinated to attack at the same time, coordinated targets, you've got about 2,200 nukes. If you assume, we'll just drop in a picture of what a 5 megaton radius destruction would be. I'm going to Photoshop that in. The things in the kind of yellowy orange circle are going to get lit on fire. Those things die, mostly. In that outer gray circle, things in there is just a slight overpressure. So you'll see residential windows are going to get blown out. There's going to be injuries from shards of glass, obviously, from that. Some houses might come down, but for the most part, definitely industrial buildings will be fine. Now, if you assume just that inner blast radius where things get set on fire and everyone dies, it would take about 6,000 missiles to cover the area of the United States. Now, that's not counting terrain. So, like, if we're looking at circles, circle. So, if you have a circle there, another circle there, circle there, circle there, you've got gaps in here and over here and over here. And if there's a mountain here, that side of the mountain's not going to get hit. So the number of nukes it would actually take to kill off the entire United States is probably somewhere around 8,000, probably more. Just to deal with, you need one in the middle there to hit it. Assuming everything is a 5 megaton bomb, which is the biggest Russia currently has. They also have plenty of 1 megaton bombs and smaller. So, frankly, there's just not enough ordnance to actually kill everyone off. Now, the next thing, let's talk about nuclear winter. This is an idea that in the event of a nuclear war, there's going to be so much debris from all the explosions thrown up into the upper atmosphere that it's going to block out the sun, cool up the entire world because there's no sunlight coming through, kill off all of the plants and all of our crops, and cause us everyone to die from this nuclear winter. Let's take a quick look. Generally, when a nuclear weapon's used, and granted we only have 2 historical incidents of nuclear weapons being used, which is World War II in Japan, what you've got, let's see, we just draw a ground, put some buildings here, no one there. When you detonate your bomb, generally you get it blown up in the sky and the force comes down to push those buildings out, and you kind of get your mushroom cloud effect there with flames. Now, that is great at knocking down buildings. So we drop it there, that building goes down, that building goes down, that building goes down, that building goes down. That pushes everything down. That does not cause a bunch of particles to be in the sky blocking out the sun, because all of our debris goes down. I'm kind of going to hit on this in nuclear fallout, but most bombs are going to get used like that. Airburst, push down, nuclear winter's not really a thing. And most mainstream scientists have kind of disproven this whole idea of nuclear winter back in the early 1980s, 40-some years ago, roughly when I was born. But the rumor just keeps circulating, and it's annoying, it's dumb, it's not really a factor. Now, erase this. Let's talk about fallout, because airburst generally doesn't generate a lot of fallout. Now, if you have, say, a runway here, and just pretend that's a nuclear bomber. I can't draw very well. So our aircraft's going that way. And you want to make sure that this runway can't be used. You might blow up a nuclear warhead actually on the runway, on the ground, to generate craters. So then your boom goes on the ground. In that case, or you would do the same thing if you're, say, attacking NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain, where they've got a huge underground facility. If you want to hit, like, say, the lighthouse, where there's significant underground facilities, same with the U.S. Capitol building, and, there's all sorts of stuff up there underground. You do the same thing, detonate the nuke right on the ground instead of in the air, so that your nuke potentially hits the stuff underground and makes our runway unusable. The vast majority of nuclear weapons would not be used like this, though, in the event of war, because they're mostly going to be hitting above ground stuff, not pot marking runways. Not to mention, like, in the event of an exchange, odds are all of those nuclear bombers are going to get scrambled, and the runway's not going to really matter too much for counterstrikes, so they're not really worth hitting. So really, ground-based detonations are going to be reserved for trying to hit facilities that have significant underground infrastructure. Now, when that happens, yes, you absolutely will blow dirt into the sky. And you're going to irradiate the dirt with a nuclear weapon. Now, it's going to take that potentially a week or two for the half-life to decay and for that stuff not to be a significant risk anymore. To deal with that, if you happen to be in the area where that dirt got thrown up or downwind of it, because it's going to stay in the air for a week or so, your cancer risk goes up significantly. If you can hide in a bomb shelter, and keep in mind, but shelter Really, you want mass between you and the nuclear radiation to absorb that. So just being in your house with a tiny thin window is not going to cut it, because that window doesn't stop much. My roof isn't going to stop much. You'd want to be under about a foot of solid dirt for that to matter. Then yeah, radiation's an issue. You stay indoors for a week, or in your shelter for a week. You're probably fine when you come out. You might have like a 5% increased chance of cancer if you come out at a week, and it goes away after about 2 weeks. But once again, that type of detonation would only be used to hit underground structures. So yeah, DC is going to get a bunch of those. If in an exchange, we don't know exactly what's targeted. If the underground silos in the Midwest, well, kind of center, like nuclear launch silos, we've got 3 different fields of nukes in the US that are ICBMs ready to go. Yeah, if you're near there, you might have fallout issues, but generally things aren't going to get hit that way, because you want to knock buildings down, not blow holes in the ground. Next issue we hear a lot about is EMP. EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And this is usually, people will say that they're expecting the electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear detonation to cause electronics to stop working. You know, your radio's suddenly fried and will never work again. Anyone who claims to know what's going to happen to a specific electronic device in an EMP is probably full of it. Yes, there was one government test decades ago to see how nuclear radiation would affect vehicles. That wasn't particularly well funded, so by the time they got late into the study, they were borrowing cars from other government agencies with kind of a you break it, you buy it return policy on those cars. And since they didn't have a lot of budget, they were rough on the first cars, and then they kind of eased off a little bit on how much radiation they exposed the cars to. But what they found is in the vast majority of cars, like over 95%, if hit by an EMP, nothing happened. The car was fine. For a few, it would cause the car to stall, and they'd turn it back on and it was fine. They had a handful where, yes, the car needed a couple parts replaced, fuses, that kind of thing, in order to get it running again, but it was easily repairable. The facilities that they used to do that radiation testing have been getting regularly rented by car manufacturers. Not for nuclear testing necessarily, but because they don't want like your neighbor's garage door opener to cause your car to stall when you're just driving down the road, or you know, somebody's downloading a big file on BitTorrent and their Wi-Fi kills your car. You don't want that. So a lot of car manufacturers have been exposing their vehicles to radiation just to see how they behave and make sure that's not an issue. The specifics of those tests are proprietary to the manufacturers, and they're not telling us about them. But the data we have says it's probably not a big deal. Let's talk about Faraday cages. Let's talk about Faraday cages in a Faraday cage. Faraday cages. Now, a lot of people seem to think this is like the golden bullet that will protect everything. The basic idea of a Faraday cage, and yes, this does work to some extent, is you have a cage made out of wire mesh, and if there is a strong radiological event, radio signals, anything electrical like lightning that hits this, what will happen is your electricity will take the path of least resistance and just follow the mesh wire around the cage instead of going through the air and zapping whatever in the middle of the cage. Now, I've seen lots of videos of people trying to build Faraday cages, and they'll like wrap something in metal and metal mesh, and then insulation layer, and then more metal, and then more insulation layer, and stick the whole thing in a 55-gallon drum and pretend their electronics are safe. In reality, Faraday cages are going to vary in effectiveness significantly. And you're going to have to talk to an electrician about exactly how effective any of these are. I've never seen a good study on it. just because if you attach like a lightning strike, it's not that it's just going to blow a hole in that thin cable. Whereas like a much lower signal, like say Wi-Fi, is going to get completely stopped by that. And if anyone's wondering, no, I didn't deliberately build a Faraday cage. Hey, you don't fit up. I have a misbehaving chicken. Come on, go down. Go in there and talk to you later. I didn't deliberately build a Faraday cage. I built a run for my chickens, and then discovered after I built it, it blocks Wi-Fi signals if I go in there. Oh well. So let's also talk about duck and cover. This was a common thing taught in schools before my time. My folks are boomers, so they've told me about it. But it was the idea, and they did drills in school, where if there's a nuclear war, you were supposed to hide under your desk. Now, in reality, if you're at ground zero, it doesn't matter, you're dead. If you're out here like I am, chilling with chickens, it doesn't really matter because you'll be fine. No, I'm not near a nuclear target. Chicken's chopped up. Pretty much no matter what I do, I'm going to be okay. Now, somewhere in the middle of that, like between ground zero and out here chilling with chirpers, yeah, duck and cover kind of has a place. A lot of the casualties or injuries that have been theorized from a nuclear attack are actually going to be caused by shattered windows, because somebody will see the blast. The light of the blast travels faster than the shockwave from the blast, travels faster than sound. So people will go, there's something really bright out the window. I want to go look out the window and see what that is. Run to the window, and then when the shockwave gets them, it'll turn the window into shards of glass that will come smack them in the face. So for that, yeah, duck and cover and hiding under your desk is actually a reasonable strategy to take if you're in that in-between space. And even if you're out here where I am, don't mind the chicken, it doesn't hurt to take cover and get your head down just in case. But overall, in the event of nuclear war, yeah, if you happen to live in downtown Washington, D.C., 2 blocks from the Pentagon, you're going to have a bad day. You may not live to see tomorrow. On the other hand, if you are out here where I am, not that big a deal, because like I'm nowhere near anything worth getting hit or getting bombed. And if you're really concerned, you should probably do some analysis on where you are. Could you duck so you're not in the way? To see if there's really a significant threat or not. One thing to expect is probably not just going to be military bases that would get hit in exchange with Russia. Soviet doctrine for a first strike consisted of moving their populations out of cities. I just had a bird. Can you get off the camera, please? Okay. By the way, these guys get their own videos on Tuesdays. Where was I? Yeah, Soviet doctrine for a first strike was to move their populations out of the cities, shoot the U.S., expect the U.S. to return fire, and then they could move their populations back into the cities. So you might lose the infrastructure and the buildings and the factories, but the factory workers were... Would you please stop jumping on top? I'm just going to let the chicken sit there on top of the camera. Sorry about the view. But you would still have the factory workers to come back and work on it. So the idea of a first strike potentially targeting a chicken. The idea of a first strike potentially targeting nuclear facility or military facilities may not be true. There may actually be more of targeting towards civilian infrastructure, manufacturing, oil refineries, power plants, that kind of thing. Okay, and I'm going to play with the chickens now.